Hey, good evening, Tikiro. Thank you so much for joining us and accepting our interview. I want to start with how have you been yourself?
I'm okay. Of course, much of our work has been disrupted by the pandemic, the lockdown. But thank God I'm fine.
Katikiro, many Ugandans sitting back in their homes now, enduring the lockdown, enduring COVID-19, are just wondering, how do we get out of this? From your own assessment as a leader, what kind of advice would you give to people?
Well, what I've observed throughout the world is that the best way to fight COVID-19 is to follow SOPs. That's why I have this mask on. I take it off now because you are a comfortable distance from me. I don't think either of us can pass on the virus to the other, just in case one of us is infected.
Yeah.
But it's important to follow SOPs, the masking. Then I've got the sanitizer here, which I use every so often. Then we must avoid crowded places. We must avoid functions, funerals, weddings, house parties, all these things. I think that's the best way to fight the pandemic. And of course I was vaccinated. I've taken my 2 jabs. But even then, that doesn't stop the infection. That's why it is still important that we encourage people to follow the SOPs. We should listen to the officials of the Ministry of Health, the experts, and the technical people from the World Health Organization. We should also listen to the leaders, because the leaders get the information which they pass on to the people. In our case, the Kabaka has spoken. I have spoken so many times about this. The Navigator has spoken. The officials of the kingdom have spoken. But at the national level, the president has spoken, and so many other ministers. We should listen to them. We shouldn't be cynical about the matters related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Neither should we be overly political, giving political twists to every direction that we're being given as far as stopping the pandemic is concerned. I advised that members of government should sit with members of the opposition and with other civic leaders, so that we map out a common route we should adopt as far as fighting this pandemic is concerned. In other countries, they do it. Those in government and those in opposition sit together and they agree on the announcements that the government makes. It makes it much easier. Even other leaders, if in our case we regularly are in touch with the officials of the Ministry of Health. Actually, I've got running videos and voice messages which which we worked out with the Ministry of Health, the central government Ministry of Health, which I think that should be the way to go. That way the message sinks down to the ordinary person. The other day I had the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Diana Twine, in a conversation with the Muhikiri of Toro, my colleague from Toro, Bernard Tungwako, and he was explaining how he survived the COVID-19 attack. I think such more efforts are worthwhile.
Charles, one of the things that I want to ask you is, many Ugandans seated back in their homes have done their part, very honestly. They've stayed at home, they put on face masks, they've observed SOPs, but they look outside and see an Auditor General's report that says COVID monies were misused. They look at the monies that are coming to members of parliament, 200 million for each member of parliament, and they see just 50 billion being sent down for relief aid to just 500,000 people. How do you guard against cynicism when such things happen, when the government effort can be looked through and seen to be very cynical in the way it's dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think there is genuine anger Because leadership is the ability to identify a solution that applies at a given moment. That's what leadership is about. We've got to set our priorities right. When you are experiencing a crisis, you must adopt such measures that are likely to solve that crisis. At the moment, we need, of course, the resources. We, especially in the health sector, I think the concentration should be upon providing the medicines, not only medicines for the cure of COVID-19, but medicines for other ailments. Because as we all know, if you've got other underlying issues and you're infected with the COVID-19, virus, you're going to be taken down easily. So at the moment, the priority should be providing the medicines in the health facilities. It should be providing the equipment. People talk about oxygen. Provision of oxygen shouldn't be one of those very difficult things, or even ambulances for that matter. How much does an ambulance cost? About $100,000 US, well equipped and all that. You can't find the right answers as to why we don't have ambulances for each of the government hospitals with petrol and tires, And you must think about the medical workers, because they're at the front line. The risks they encounter in fighting the epidemic are quite high. Those are the priorities that we should be focused on. So when the people are angry, I think they've got genuine reasons to be angry. Notwithstanding the fact that members of parliament must be facilitated. There are also other issues. I mean, you have 594 members of parliament for a population of 45 million. What are we doing here? So all these are the questions that people are going to ask. These are the questions that are going to anger the population, because the answers they get are not, they don't seem to be appropriate.
As a leader, how differently would you advise that we handle this COVID-19 pandemic, particularly the response that's not the health response? How differently would you advise that it's handled moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think we should try to connect with the population. We should try to connect with the population. If everybody wants to be healthy, so people flock to towns, to markets, to urban centers. It's not because they are careless with their life, but because they're trying to survive. And because they know that if they don't come out, they're going to starve probably in their homes. So we've got to connect with the population. We've got to engage all categories of leaders in the country. It cannot be the minister alone, the RDC alone, or the police chiefs by themselves. You've got to look at, in a situation like in Buganda, where you have a farm structure all the way to the villages, if we worked with the government, we would play a big part in relaying the message about preventing the epidemic to the ordinary person, and probably people think we are genuine. If you engage the religious leaders, a priest has outreach through the catechists, through the lay Christian leaders, the sheikh, the imams, and people listen to them. Because when you do not do that, there is a risk that people are going to think you're just punishing them. Especially when things like, whoa, you've disbursed money to the MPs for new vehicles, or the government is engaged in all sorts of things. People hear about all these big amounts of money going down the drain. And then at the same time, you tell the people to stay home. People believe that maybe you want to punish them. But if you engage the other categories of leaders, I think the message would be relayed in a more practical and convincing manner. And I think that should be done. Government doesn't lose anything. If government can have a healthy population, if we can overcome the pandemic, we are going to make major strides together as Ugandans.
You mentioned major strides, and you've been described as one of the most consequential prime ministers of Buganda.
Well, that's humbling.
By many people.
That's humbling.
What would you say has been the legacy of your leadership thus far within the Buganda kingdom?
Well, I should say working with the people. The few, things we've done, the modest achievements, which I'm pleasantly learning from you, that has been appreciated. The few things we've done have been accomplished because I try to work with the people. I've got a very good office in Bulangi, and it's very comfortable when I work from within it. But then the people who were entrusted to me are down in the villages, down there in the villages and in the small towns. So I'm all the time, interfacing with them, encouraging them to rise up and abandon being apathetic. Have initiative, have the drive, have the determination, the courage to push on amidst all these challenges. And fortunately, people have been responsive. I think if you're looking for what this defines legacies, that could be one. Interfacing with the ordinary people.
And yet you've run initiatives, Emwanyi Terimba, you've reconstructed the kingdom finances, but when you walk away from the city center, you still see glaring poverty. You still see people living within squalor conditions. What would you say is the missing link? What's the one thing that if this happened, it would increase the development of our people?
I think there are four things if we were to get to experience economic transformation for the country. First of all, we must place emphasis in areas where we have comparative advantage, and that's agriculture. You can couple it with animal husbandry. Then after that, we must place emphasis on commerce. And I can explain shortly. Then thirdly, we must place emphasis on tourism. We can get, if you want, free money from tourism, if the adequate strategies were drawn and implemented. And finally, the fourth should be about marketing. And let me go back now to agriculture. I mean, look, 70% of the people in the villages, you're not going to transform a community unless you start in the area where they have a comparative advantage. South Korea, their transformation journey is as recent as 1968, 1970, the early 70s, through the 70s. And they emphasized agriculture, because it was an agrarian economy in South Korea. But then, what is key with an agrarian economy is to market what people produce. First of all, you help them, you guide them on what to produce. And certain things are already worked out in our case in Uganda. For example, coffee. You have to market the coffee. You must make sure the coffee is of good quality. You must make sure people get good price for their coffee. People will grow it. Animal husbandry, I mean, in Ankole, in Teso, in Karamoja, everywhere. It would be very easy if you adopted the relevant, logistical issues that feed into the process, into the chain. Then, again with marketing, people travel all the way from northern Tanzania, all the way up to Mpiji and everywhere looking for eggs. Eggs. Before the border was closed with Rwanda, people coming from all over Rwanda coming to Uganda for eggs. People come from Zaire for eggs. Congo for eggs. So, what mechanism do we have as a country for marketing our poultry industry? How much, logistical support is given to those engaged in poultry? These are the questions. So marketing is extremely important. Then you look at tourism. You know, let me tell you something. If we adopted the relevant strategies for tourism, like for Sese Islands, why should anyone go to Mombasa? It is hot, it is humid, the ocean water is salty. Go to Sese, it's cool, the water is fresh, it's nature. I think with proper strategies, you can get 1,000 times more money from tourism as far as Sese Islands is concerned than the money we get from palm oil or things like that. If you marketed properly, farming. The other day I was watching a video of an American who came to Uganda for the first time, and he was talking about matoke, how it is peeled and how it is steamed and how it is eaten with ginat sauce and all these things. If you marketed our farming, agriculture properly, it can earn you lots of money in tourism. People will come to see that. That's why I called it free money. Free money.
You've run a good campaign in agriculture called the Mwanyi Terimba, where you've been encouraging people in Buganda to go back and grow coffee. And as reading in one of your speeches to the Luchiko, the realization that despite calling people to go into coffee and it's earning for Buganda now money, despite people going back there, there's still issues on land ownership. Majority of the young people who would actually have the bodywork to carry out agriculture don't have land. They can't access capital. And even if they could access capital, the ones that take part in the agriculture then discover that the market just rids them of their product. It buys it at a cheaper price and pays them peanuts. Wouldn't you say in the journey of Mwanyi Terimba, you have seen some of the structural problems with the way the country's economy is?
They do exist, but they don't apply to farmers alone. If you want to do anything at all, if you want to do business, for example, if you went to import stuff from China, you're going to meet structural challenges. You're going to bring products which the market may not want. You're going to be affected by that. You are going to be affected by the tax regime when you import the merchandise from China, then the taxes and all these things. Now, if you want to make any progress at all anywhere, you must be determined to overcome the hurdles, the challenges you meet. Yes, you may not have enough land, but who told you that if you're going to grow coffee, you must start with 10 acres? Start with 1 acre. You know, because of the constant talk about coffee production, a certain man who was a border rider at Pub, you know, decided to sell his border. And he went back to Bukoma and Simbi to grow coffee. Started with, then he sold the border. He bought a car which was using as a taxi. I think they're called Premier. There are cars, I think they're Toyotas anyway.
Yes.
And then he sold it eventually and bought 3 acres of land in Bukoma and Simbi. He told me, I want to visit him. I visited him at his farm. And he said, he felt like I was talking to him directly. He thought I knew him because I was saying all the time that, yes, it is easier to get money on a border because every day when you work, you'll get something. But in the long run, somebody who's got coffee will earn more than you. So he started with 3 acres of coffee. By the time I visited him, he had 17 acres. And he was living very well by any account. So if you're going to start anything at all, you must be prepared to meet the challenges. Start whatever you want to start with a grand idea in your head, but start in a humble way. But with the focus, you know, on top of a hill. Therefore, those people who want to produce coffee should go ahead. You can start growing coffee on half an acre of land. You will never have enough of the inputs you need as you start any business, any venture in life. That's how it is. When I was starting my law firm with my partner, Francis Bure, in 1994, we were young, we were inexperienced, we didn't have money. We got our first furniture from Undeba, you know, and on credit at that. And on credit at that. And it was scary, but we started. That applies in any field you operate in. Whatever it may be professional, it may be semi-professional, it may be whatever it is. It's the ability to start what you want to do. Now, coffee, it may not pay as much as anyone may dream, but it pays the one who has the coffee, and he's better off than the one who doesn't have it, especially if you are in the rural setting. That's why we traverse the kingdom, urging people to participate in this economic activity.
Do you, for many Buganda youth who are watching this kind of program, who've been sold the dream that, look here, go get educated, get a university degree, you'll be employed. They've run the course of that dream, they realize how frustrating it's become. What kind of advocacy do you have for such people? They can't go to a bank to get a loan because they don't have anything in their possession. Their families worked so hard to take them to university. That kind of structural problem, how do you address it in a way that doesn't visit responsibility back to the people who are suffering?
Well, unemployment is a global challenge. Even when you go to the biggest economies, there are people who struggle to find jobs. That happens. But what's your dream as a young man? How do you want to turn out 15 years after university? What do you want to be? Where do you envision yourself to be? I think it all starts in the head. Because if your focus is to make progress, then you must conjure up a picture of yourself. You know, in the future, this is what I want to be. And that gives you the hope. And the hope acts as the fuel to keep you going. Definitely somebody who goes to university wants to wear a tie, you know, sit behind a desk. And I don't begrudge them. I mean, that's how you're tuned to think. But life does not end because you didn't wear a tie, even if you went to the university. And because you went to the university, your mind has been broadened to venture out into many things. The late Bone Katatumba had carts, you know, carts, these, what do you call them? The carts which carry goods in town.
The wheelbarrows.
The wheelbarrows. They ride Batoro for pushing carts in Kampala. I don't know whether all the cart pushers are from Toro.
Yes.
But he did BCom, and the BComers of his time would automatically get jobs. But then he started that business and dry cleaning. And he started from there, and he made himself good money in the course of time. The second deputy Katikkiro of Buganda and finance minister, Oweekitiibwa Robert Wagwansibira, quit his job. He was working in the bank, and he quit his job at, I think, at the age of 32 or something like that, and started out in the private sector. And he's a businessman of some repute right now. It's about the vision you have. And it's not going to be easy. By the way, even if you got a job, you know, because when you're in the university, you think after 5 years or after 8 years, you're going to be driving a BMW. You know, you watch too many movies, and you think you're going to be driving a BMW or something. Even when you get a job, you must work your way up the ladder wherever you're working. It takes focus, it takes effort, it takes retaining hope at every stage of the way. So, people should continue pursuing education. It acts like the bedrock upon which you you juggle out the different opportunities that will come your way. So, yes, unemployment is a big challenge, and I don't begrudge those who are doing board after finishing university, or those who are doing chapatis. What I really discourage is this flying out to the Arab world, or even to Europe, to do menial jobs. I think a graduate will find his way. He or she will overcome the challenges. Because you're abroad, you can learn about the way the world works because of the education you have. But at the end of the day, what really creates jobs for any country is economic progress. When I think Uganda was at its peak in current times, in the 90s, lots of jobs were being created because every economic activity creates a whole line of job opportunities. Now, that's what needs to be done. If we as a country focus on areas where we have a comparative advantage, jobs will be created. Some people talk about industries. For example, agriculture can create so many industries. It is far much easier to set up industries related to the economic activities in a country than aping what other people do. I don't know whether we can compete with Samsung as far as the manufacture of TV is concerned, or mobile phones. I really don't know. But we can compete with anyone when it comes to agro-based industries. We grade the coffee. We can even roast the coffee here if we have our priorities right. And this comes lots and lots of jobs. An industrial setup. But if our focus is to manufacture mobile phones or computers, I don't know. I think we shall have a long, long way to go.
Chichiba, doesn't this put us in direct contestation with government at the moment? Because many young people see government riding over them, going and attracting investment from outside, say Chinese investment, Turkish investment, and bringing those investors into the country with the hope that they'll create jobs. And in effect, what they do is they take the money back to their countries. And that's created some level of tension, not just out in Buganda alone, even outside of Buganda. But it's created the most tension in areas like Buganda, where a lot of these investors are settling. Would you advise government now to be patient with and invest in its people rather than attracting foreign direct investment?
I think we can have foreign direct investment in areas of comparative advantage. For example, agriculture. I would be happy if we had the Chinese here getting involved with agriculture. There are so many opportunities as far as agriculture is concerned. I was talking about poultry, I was talking about horticulture. Some time back I was visited by the UAE ambassador to Uganda. He came to my office and he asked, can you get me 5,000 heads of goats every week? If you can guarantee me 5,000 heads of goats every week, then we shall get an abattoir that is at the standard that is, international standards of slaughtering animals and all these things. And then we shall fly them to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or wherever. I think we can get 5,000 heads of goats if we do the right things. We can. We can get foreign direct investments in the production of horticultural, crops, the fruits, the vegetables. How about people who come and work with us as far as coffee is concerned? FDI doesn't have to be about mineral water only. I see lots of investors packaging mineral water. I don't know how many advantages a water bottling plant opens up in the country. I really don't know. If it was with coffee, if it was with simsim, if it was with animal husbandry, I'm very happy about Lato. I don't know, maybe they come from Kenya or wherever, Malaysia, or I don't know. I'm very happy about these people because clearly that creates advantages in the people, within the people who are cattle keepers. That's what we need to do with coffee and also bananas. You know, Ugandan sweet bananas, for example. I don't know whether, I've traveled all over the world. I've never tasted bananas as sweet as Ugandan bananas or pineapples. Even here in Kenya, by testing, you can clearly see the pineapples that are grown in Uganda and those from Kenya. What have we done about promoting all these products? So we can get investors, but we should get them in relation to areas of comparative advantage in the country. That's my take.
Buganda takes a lot of social leadership in Uganda, and the political problem of unemployment is quickly becoming a social problem. Is this something that you have with urgency addressed with the central government to tell them you must solve this problem? Otherwise it affects the social relations, which social relations then become a problem for an institution like Buganda.
Every time we engage with leaders in the central government, we bring these points out. And we do all the time. That's why we get support from government as far as Mwanterimba. For example, UCDA provides all the seedlings, which is commendable. And I've asked the CEO of UCDA to even give us more than that, because the objectives of UCDA is to ensure that coffee is grown. And that would help the youth in finding employment. And if they gave us more than the seedlings, if they gave us more logistical support, we would enable them achieve their objectives, and government would be the happier for it. But that goes also with many other projects that we initiate, and we bring it out. And I think the biggest cause of restlessness, even here in Buganda, is poverty and unemployment. That can be coupled with land evictions. That can be coupled with lawlessness, you know, the murders and all these things. The police, I don't know how equipped they are to deal with the simplest of crime, you know. I went to Bulemezi during the Tofali. I went to Ndeje, around the university, those schools around Ndeje, in the villages there, and I urged women, they came out in droves, and I told them to rear pigs. They were not Muslims. I asked them to rear pigs because the droppings of pigs are very good to regenerate nutrients in the soil. Because the soil in that area is not all that, you know, fertile. And, you know, when people involve themselves in agriculture, the yields are not good. So I told them, couple that with the rearing of pigs. Then a woman, when I just finished my speech, and usually I would speak last, some young woman shot up her head, said, "Katikino nyina chengamba." I reared pigs, and thieves came and broke into my pig style, and they stole my pigs. I ran to the police, and they didn't help me. I lost. I hardly had an answer for the lady. Because lawlessness impedes economic activity, definitely. And when there is no economic activity, poverty sets in. And when poverty sets in, there will be no employment. And all these social problems you're talking about. So, we engage with the government and we bring these things out. And I think it is up to government to adopt the pieces of advice we render.
One of the areas of engagement with government that has touched the nerve is engagement on land evictions. How would you propose that government deals with land evictions?
They must find the actual challenges. Why are there land evictions? Those should be the questions. Why did the land evictions start in the 90s and the 2000s? If you got a fever, you must know the cause of the fever. If there are mosquitoes, you spray your area or you clear the bushes. If it is not, if the fever is not due to malaria, if it is due to COVID-19, then you got the doctors and they give you the medication for COVID-19. If you treat every fever like you're treating malaria, then you're going to kill people. The causes of a land evictions should be identified, and we've played our part. The other day you hosted the Ochichiwa David Impang, and he elaborated. Someone should sit down and listen. I have talked, I don't know how many times, about these issues. If the courts can't adjudicate land matters, if the land office have got the confusion, if the police are not well equipped or not professional, if we don't address the nutrients drying out of land within the country so that people require more land, if we do not appreciate the problem of population explosion, which again, leads to big numbers of people, looking for land, if we don't deal with the corrupt people in government who get to know about government projects, they go and buy land, and eventually they impede government projects because they demand exorbitant amounts of money in compensation. If we don't stop politicizing the land issues, we shall never get the correct answer. But we've highlighted all these issues, and let me tell you, it's the truth. And I'm sure at some point in time, people will have to concede these problems that we've pointed out. And once they do, and you get the relevant and appropriate solutions, there should be no problem.
Katikiro, one of the reasons we didn't have you last week and we have you this week is because you've been busy organizing for the coronation of the Kabaka. One of the social questions that has been arising mostly is, how is the Kabaka? How is... That's a question many people have been asking us to ask. But how is the Kabaka?
In May they saw him. In May yes. He addressed his subjects who reside in the diaspora. Every 2 years the Buganda in North America convene in one of the cities. I think the last time we were with them was in 2019. I think we were in Washington, D.C. In 2017 we were in Atlanta, Georgia. This year they should have convened in Chicago. And usually I go with a prince or a princess to deliver the Kabaka's message. The Kabaka had decided that he would go himself this year, but he couldn't go because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he addressed his subjects on Zoom on the 28th of May, and they saw him. I'm sure you saw him. Because I don't remember whether NTV ran that as a news item.
We did.
Yes, we did. And I think you did, and I think the viewers on NTV saw the Kabaka. So the answer is there.
So for people in Buremezi, the question would be Jari Alamura.
Yes, Jari Alamura. But look, I know what you're trying to ask me. You're being polite about this whole thing. All of us get taken ill. All of us get taken ill now and again. All of us. If you've never been taken ill, get down on your knees and thank your God. But all of us get taken ill. The Kabaka can be taken ill. And I talked about these things. And what I told the people is the truth. So I was surprised when so many people didn't. It's amazing how much people need to learn. You get to understand this when you watch their reaction, when you hear their reaction. When I told them about the allergy, they were like, how? Some people think allergy is about itches on the skin. An allergy can be very dangerous, actually, if it is not identified and dealt with appropriately. But the Kabaka is in good hands. There are the most capable medical people who take care of him. But we as the leaders also follow everything. So what I can say is that he's being taken good care of as far as health is concerned. And we don't have cause to worry.
Katikiro, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, the future of the Kingdom of Buganda. In your own assessment, what's the future of the Kingdom of Buganda?
I think the future is bright. I think the future is bright because largely of three things. One, the kingdom's programs are people-centered. Every time I'm in a meeting with the Kabaka, he asks me about all these programs. He wants to know whether we are carrying out the programs that he wants us to carry forward. Health, education, poverty eradication, employment, all these things. He wants us to know how the young people are fitting into the programs. Now that takes us to the youth. And it is pleasing to note that about, I think 80%, I don't even think 70, I think over 70, maybe 80% of the people who like respond to the programs we initiate are young people, many of whom were not even born in 1993. Now, if anything is embraced by the young people, then you know it is going to be embraced in the future. And thirdly, the Kabaka has managed to build strong unity within his people as far as Buganda issues are concerned. When I go out to interface with the people, it's amazing where I'm hosted. Today you'll find me in a mosque, at an imam's home. The other day you'll find me within the Banyankole in Maogola, wherever. The other day I'll be within Catholic, the residence of Catholic priests in a parish. Everywhere, and people are saying, oh, extend our greetings to the king, we appreciate this. For me that is extremely important, because you see, you cannot build the future of the kingdom around the officials working in Bulangi. No, you can't. You can only build the future of the kingdom around the people, the ordinary people down there in the villages or the small towns. Because the kingdom is about the people. If they do not relate to what we do, then you are done in. But in my assessment, that unity enables us to work with everybody. And it was amazing during the Tofa, or even now during Mwancherimba. When I go out for Mwancherimba campaigns, I get the NRMs on one side, I get the NUPs on one side, the DPs, everybody is telling me, oh, we need to work together because this is Kabaka's program. Now that is important. That is important. And I think the future is bright.
Do you worry that you had a national election where jointly many of the people within Buganda who reside in Buganda voted against the government of the day? Is that something that causes you sleepless nights?
It causes me anxiety, because you want to work with a government that feels that is being supported in the area where you superintend. Not to worry, but maybe some anxiety. But at the end of the day, this is what I say, and I've said it so many times after the elections. If these are the people who have voted this government in the previous 5 elections, there must be a reason why they voted this way. And somebody in government must sit down calmly and evaluate the outcome of the election and address those issues. We've been talking about them. Poverty, lawlessness, land evictions, corruption. These are the areas. And, you know, every other election, I think promises have been made that they're going to be addressed. The Buganda question itself is of much concern to the voters. We talk about, you know, government agencies operating in our outposts. At Gombolola, at district level, at Saza headquarters, they don't want to pay rent, they don't want to regularize their occupancy. Then you hear billions being given to individuals. People take note of these things. You know, the ordinary people are underrated. They know what they want. They know what they want overall. So when there is this unease with all the desires that they have, they're going to vote in a particular way. And somebody in government has to address these concerns.
Do you have any fears that the nightmares of 1966 or any other, where the clash between the kingdom and the central government just goes out of hand, do you have any fears that any of that could happen?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think people in central government are more restrained than those who were there in 1966. And us running the kingdom, I think, are more aware of the elements that can cause this kind of clashes. But having said that, everyone should be aware that violence begets violence. That when violence is unleashed on a group of people or in an institution, it spreads. And in Buganda being the heart of the country, it is going to affect the whole body. And I think those in government are much smarter than that. I don't have to worry about that. I don't think it will happen. But we shall have the tiffs. We can have the tiffs. You know, People are going to be displeased now and again because of certain developments. And I do not think that that shouldn't be expected. That happens in every country. That happens in every country. So that's why you see when they usher out a prime minister in UK, they come out of 10 Downing Street crying. Because they're asking themselves, where did we go wrong? That happens everywhere. So the tips are going to happen, but I don't think it should lead to full-scale violence. But should that happen again, people should know that violence only begets violence. Nobody gets saved when violence is on its, on its way to devour everything. And I do not think Ugandans are like that.
Katikiro, my final question. I talked to you about how the public perceives you. They perceive you as being one of the most consequential prime ministers of Buganda, but also you now are perceived as a consequential national leader. How do you perceive of yourself? What legacy do you perceive of yourself? If you were to write your own wreath, how would you write it?
I don't know. First of all, I'm hoping that I'm still here. You know, these wreaths are placed on coffins when people die. So I'm hopefully still here with you guys. Secondly, right now I'm still in charge of running the kingdom on behalf of the Kabaka. And I want to concentrate on my job. Thirdly, when I retire from this job, I hopefully will go into retirement for about disappear from the public, because I've been in the public glare for just too long. I started this when I was young, and write my memoirs. And if I'm perceived to have caused positive change within the kingdom, within the country, then I'll thank my God for it.
One question I'd forgotten is the critics. How do you deal with your critics? In the last years, you've had critics, critics who've manufactured fake news against you, critics who've openly called you out on your leadership style. How do you handle critics, and what is it that you've learned about handling critics that you would teach other leaders?
I was reading Tony Blair's book, his autobiography. He graciously signed one for me, himself, and his wife too. And he says somewhere that in leadership you must avoid enemies, because you create so many others you are not aware of. I mean, leaders never win. Leaders simply have to do what is right. Whatever you do, people are going to criticize you. Last year during the COVID-19 pandemic, government attempted to distribute food. And so many people said government should give people cash. At some stage, the government in Kenya gave cash to people on their M-Pesa accounts. This year, the Prime Minister has been,
giving out cash,
disbursing cash on people's mobile phone. And I heard some other people say, no, people should be given food. But that's where we started. And they said money is not enough. 100,000 is so little. But I think 100,000 is a lot more valuable than the 2-3 kilograms of posho that was being dished out. But as a leader, you just have to do what you think is right. You listen to what people see. A leader must have an idea. You share it with your colleagues. You debate it. They advise you. You listen. You sit in a quiet corner and you think about all the pieces of advice that have been given to you. Then you take a decision. For better or for worse, the buck stops with you. So, people are always going to criticize anyone who is doing anything impactful anywhere in the world. So I don't pay much attention to people who are critical of my working style. They are bound to happen. Whatever you do. I remember when I just started a Tofari, a lady came to me. I don't know whether I said this to TV last year. I think I said this to Patrick Kamara. Probably I did. I don't remember. And she said, the Katikiro of Buganda can't go out with the bowl in hand begging for alms. Very respectable lady. But I told her, look, I'm not begging from anyone. These projects are not mine. These projects are for us. The projects I run out, I carry forward, I execute with the money from a Tofari. Look at Masengere building, BBC, BBS TV, and so many other projects. Now, when we had collected, in the first 2 months, we had raised about 700 million. She came and asked me to give her 20 million. She had personal financial issues. I laughed until, you know.
Your stomach hurt.
Until my stomach hurt. This is the lady who said I shouldn't be going out to beg. I wasn't begging. She was begging. Whatever you do, people tell you you should do this first instead of the other. When we built the perimeter wall around the tombs, it's a 3-kilometer stretch, you know. Then we started on Masengere. Somebody came and said, no, we shouldn't do Masengere. We should do the other thing. When the Kabaka was commissioning Masengere in 2015, that same person came and said, hey, neka take it to Yambi. That's how people are. You conceive an idea. You share it with your colleagues. You debate it. They advise you. You sit down in a quiet corner. You take a decision, for better or for worse. If the decision is wrong, you correct it subsequently. If the decision is right, you take a glass of water in Thanksgiving.
Charles Peter Mayiga, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.